Hey everybody, welcome to Small Group. I'm so excited about the conversation that you are about to have. Here's why. Because I really do believe that when you get out of that row on a Sunday morning and get into a circle like you are now, good things happen. The stuff that we talk about on a Sunday lingers because you're discussing it with people you do life with. So it becomes difficult to forget what we've been talking about. Now tonight's conversation is about the new public square or social media. And I get it, that's a private and personal space. And a lot of us don't like talking about what we put there, but everybody's seeing it anyway. And so we have to be really conscious of what we're putting into the public square. Now, if you read back in the history books in the old days when we had public squares, this is a space where 3 or more roads converge. Everybody in the town comes for socializing, getting to know the people that they live around, sharing their opinions about different things, getting into debate, and becoming known by others. And we may not have a lot of public squares in this day and age, although they're making a comeback in some cities. Social media serves as our public square. Think about this. Studies show that by 2018, 2.5 billion people will be on social media. That's about 35% of the global population makes it through the public square at some point in their day. And so a lot of us share what we had for dinner, a lot of us share our opinion about politics, and a lot of us share what we believe about God, about Jesus, or religion in general. And if we're going to be doing that, if we're going to be making God famous in the public square, then we need to be very careful about the things that we share, because it's an opportunity. There's no doubt about that. But it's an opportunity to do a lot of good, but it's also an opportunity to do a lot of bad. In the good side, if you look back on Christianity, it's always been spread through social networks. If you remember Paul in Acts, over and over again, he goes to social networks, whether it's Jews or Gentiles in the philosopher group or whatever. It's in those areas that the gospel was shared through personal connection and discussion. And it spread from there. And we're a part of the church today in large part because of social networks. So it's a good opportunity. But sometimes we use it for bad reasons. And we talked about this idea of fragmenting our identity, where on Sunday we're a really kind, gracious, generous Christian. But sometimes when we have a screen between us and everybody else, we're not as afraid to say some things that we would never say if the person was actually in our room. And we present ourselves in ways that we would never present ourselves in person. And so what does it look like to be people of integrity and lack hypocrisy in that social scene? And the passage we looked at was an interesting one because it's from James and it talks about our tongue. There's no tongue in social media, except it is our primary means of communication, just like our actual tongue in our mouth is. And so James talks about how our tongue is like a rudder on a ship. And even though that ship is gigantic, it's a very small rudder that steers that ship in the direction that it wants to go. And I'd like to make the argument that your keyboard is that rudder, that your keyboard is your tongue. And James says we need to be very careful with it because it can be like a spark that sets a forest on fire. It can do a lot of damage. It can be the same thing that in one breath is praising God and glorifying God, and in the other is condemning humanity. Those two things can't come from the same place, is what James would say. So what does it look like for us to be people of integrity when it comes to social media? I think that Christians should be welcomed in the public square because of who we are, because of how we carry ourselves. And so we looked at the fruit of the Spirit and we asked ourselves, what does it look like to infuse Facebook, infuse Twitter, infuse Instagram, infuse Snapchat with those fruit of the Spirit, to be loving, to be patient, to be kind, to be good, and to bring those things to the public square instead of bringing division and anger and soapbox and say it how it is and stir the pot kind of thinking. What if we were like Jesus? When he walked into the room, he changed the dynamic because of who he was, not always what he said. Now, to be sure, some of the things he said caused people to walk away and not everybody agreed. But he built relational equity. And I think we as Christians need to work really hard to build that same equity in the new public square or social media. So my challenge to you this week is to think through what would it look like to every single day put a little Jesus into the public square and bring love bring joy, bring peace, encourage someone, uplift a brother or sister from church, what would it look like for you to make God famous with your social media? Have a great conversation.